Rock and roll here on Friday for Friday 15 with Master B2B. Hello, everyone. My name is Brian Beck. I'm here with Andy Hoar for another episode of Friday 15. Andy, welcome. Ending summer here, moving into the fall season. Football season has started. Exciting times. My team won last week. Yours did not.
Well, there's going to be a lot more of that this fall, I think. Maybe not your team winning, but definitely my team winning.
Shut up. Yeah, I know. I get it. Okay. Well, everyone, welcome to Friday 15. We got a great topic we're going to be talking about today. But again, before we do, we're going to get into some breaking news. Everybody, hey, Andy, did you see this? Google avoided the breakup, but must share data with rivals. Just this week, major ruling came down. This is really, I think, a lot in Google's favor. Really, I mean, ultimately, they kind of dodged a bullet here. But what's your take on this, Andy? This is a major development in the case against Google.
Yeah, and there'll be a theme throughout this particular Friday 15. But this week was tough trying to pick breaking news because there was so much of it that we have to almost spread it out. So we'll have some more stuff next week as well. But you know, in terms of the most important story, this may be edged out one or two others. But yeah, so this is the story about a lawsuit that the Justice Department brought against Google, I think 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And it was really about whether Google was illegally tying contracts. And specifically, were they getting exclusive contracts with companies and foreclosing competition? And the Justice Department determined they're in a monopoly. And they actually wanted them to break up, sell off Chrome, sell off Android. This was all on the table. And then they got really lucky because the judge said that was kind of unwarranted. I think a lot to do because of the ever-changing situation in search, and that, you know, when this started, Google had 90% of the search market. Well, the search market now includes OpenAI, ChatGPT, Perplexity, all these different. And I think Google was in the strange position of arguing, wait a minute, we got a ton of competition now. And so this is not the same. And I think they won their argument with the judge, who basically said, yeah, you don't have to break up, but you have to start sharing data with your rivals. And that's what this slide says here. It was one thing that came out of this. This is kind of a big deal. And I think it's to be determined what impact it's going to have. Google now has to share clickstream data with competitors so they can help train other search and AI tools. Now think about this for a moment. Google has to share their information with Microsoft,
right?
So that Microsoft can train Bing, and through Microsoft's partnership with OpenAI, Gemini, ChatGPT, Perplexity. So basically, Google's got to turn over the keys to the kingdom here. Now, how that happens, when it happens, whether it's enforceable or not, that's going to be interesting. But you know, the real big winner here, as a side note here, is Google is a big winner. And I just read this morning that Alphabet added $234 billion in market cap because of this decision. Sure. But the other story was Apple added $130 billion in market cap. Why Apple? Because Google was paying Apple $20 billion a year to be the default search engine on iPhones, etc. Yep. And this could have upended that decision because it could have made that illegal. And now it's not illegal. So Apple didn't have to say bye-bye to $20 billion in revenue. So that generated $130 billion in market cap. So Apple's the winner here too.
Well, what's fascinating to me, Andy, is this is another indication of how far our legal system lags the actual market. I mean, in technology, I mean, look at this. I mean, if you read some of the context around this decision, you know, the judge is actually saying, hey, you know what, Google, you're right. You know, AI is kind of upending your business model. And, you know, by the time this stuff gets to the courts and gets to decisions, it's irrelevant. I mean, it's not completely irrelevant, but it is way behind where the market is. The market is changing. Google is being forced to eat its own business model. I like to say, you know, with advertising, I mean, they have to present answers in their search results, which don't lead to clicks, which guess what, don't lead to revenue for
well,
Google.
That competes. This is the funny part. I wonder if behind closed doors, Google's like, wait a minute, not only are you competing with like ChatGPT and Perplexity and all those, but we're competing with ourselves because
that's right.
Gemini is a zero-click search metaphor. And if you're using that, you're not using Google's traditional search. So Google is competing with itself.
And not only that, I mean, you got new players like Amazon, which have taken over product search. I mean, Google's now not irrelevant, but much less relevant than it was related to product search. Amazon's got the biggest share there. So, you've got AI, you've got Amazon, and so the market has changed. And Google is just kind of, because they're a big target with a big G, attracting this stuff. And it was, the federal government is litigating something that was, from 5 years ago. Fascinating.
But this ain't over with yet for the reasons
No,
we just mentioned. And there's also another pending lawsuit. And there's a whole bunch of stuff in Europe, but there's a pending lawsuit right now about whether Google holds a monopoly with online advertising technology. So the
right.
technology infrastructure, well, they have to do something about that. So this isn't over. Stay tuned. But yes, it is kind of odd to be looking at this and thinking they bring these lawsuits. 5 years later, the market has changed so dramatically that the lawsuit is irrelevant. And
Right.
the lawsuit comes along, that will become irrelevant as well. And so you're right. It is not just lagging, it's in the rearview mirror, the legal
Yeah,
system.
you wonder if Google and some of these other big players that are subject to this don't just get ahead of it and break themselves up, right? It just, you know what I mean? Like,
Well,
look at
yeah,
Amazon,
Google's effectively doing that. They're competing with themselves with Gemini and the zero click searching.
right?
And they're like, we don't care what the government says. We're moving
Right.
on.
Yep. Yeah, it's crazy. All right. Well, you got to get to our topic today, which is all about, is delayering an effective way to run a company today? And by delayering, we mean really, folks, flattening the organization, right? Eliminating some middle management. Now, managers have a tremendous number of direct reports. People are getting rewarded for this. We'll go through some examples. Andy, this is an incredible trend, and it seems to be accelerating, and particularly as we, AI coming into the picture, things like that. This is a Wall Street Journal article that kind of started our thinking around this and prompted us to do a session around this today. This came out this week. The article's title is "Your Boss Doesn't Have Time to Talk to You." According to Gartner, the ratio of employees to managers has gone from 1 to 5 just 7 years ago to 8 or 1 to 15 in 2023. That's 5 to 15. That's 3x. Oh my goodness. Google recently said it had cut 35% of its managers of small teams. Intel eliminated 50% of its management layers. Estée Lauder, the dating app operator Match Group, says they each cut 20%. Andy, oh my gosh, you're a manager. Now you don't have 5 reports. Now you have 15. 40% of global professionals on a Korn Ferry poll said that their companies had slashed management ranks. This is happening everywhere. Andy, this is crazy. What are you seeing?
Well, yeah, I mean, this is testing the theory that, you don't, because the other thing we did mention is that also nobody's hiring anybody at the entry level as
Right.
well. So
Right.
you're not hiring people. You're basically laying off a bunch of people in the middle part of the organization. And you're just hoping for the best. That's all going to work out. I mean, there's a bit of a musical chairs about this. They take away a couple of chairs and then they just call the music off, and whoever gets a chair gets to stay and everybody else is gone. And they're trying to argue that we don't need as many people. We can replace those people with technology or just not replace them at all. And just as the case here is, take 3 teams, move them into one, fire 2
Right.
of the managers and say, now you've got the whole team. But the consequence of it is, this article pointed out that employees can't see their managers, and managers don't have time to manage their employees. So it's a big experiment that we'll talk about this in a moment. Is this going to go well or poorly?
I have my doubts, Andy. I mean, I've managed people for 20, oh gosh, almost 30 years. And it is hard to manage more than 5 or 6 people. You can't, you end up reacting to things and not really being able to think through, their development, or, you're reacting to the latest event rather than putting thoughtful thought into, kind of reflecting on the overall trend of how that employees do. I mean, there's just so much to me it's going to impact decision making. But what's happening here is the great flattening, right? CEOs are shrinking their workforces, and they couldn't be prouder. And just look at some of these quotes, Andy. This is from Hans Vestberg, Verizon CEO. We've been very, very good at headcount. It's going down all the time. How about Zach Muweka, head of capital markets at Sloan Company? Being honest about cost and headcount isn't just allowed, it's rewarded. And check this out, Brian Moynihan, CEO of Bank of America. over the last 15 years or so, we went from 300,000 people to 212,000 people. We just got to keep working that down. This is like, okay, these companies are really proud of downsizing their workforce, but what does it say about their effectiveness? And maybe AI comes in and saves the day here, as an enabler for these people. But to me, there's some fundamental issues related to forcing a manager to manage 3 times the number of people. What are your thoughts?
Well, there's tons of thoughts, but I think there are a bunch of different issues at play here. In the tech sector, there was clear overhiring that took place during and immediately following the pandemic. So some of the tech companies are reducing their forces,
Yeah.
probably because they overhired before. And so they're leveling that out. That's the case. But there are other companies that are just taking advantage of the opportunity to remove individuals who they consider to be quasi redundant in a management capacity. And they may or may not be right about that, because we've seen, by the way, the counter argument is a lot of companies have a lot of bloat and they have a
Right.
lot of,
Sure.
too many managers, too many chiefs and not enough Indians kind of
Mhm.
circumstance. But we don't know. Every company is different. Every culture is different. And we're going to see some are probably going to be successful ish. Some are going to be horribly unsuccessful. And we don't know because every company is different. But this is just one in a series of ongoing stories. There's another story we're going to talk about in a moment here about Salesforce, Mark Benioff. And again, this is another complicated story because it's not as straightforward as it seems, but he's now bragging about the fact that he said, if we were having this conversation a year ago and you were calling Salesforce, there would be 9,000 people who would be managing, creating, reading, updating, and deleting data. So basically 9,000 CSRs. Today, those same interactions are happening, he alleges, but with 50% of them being agents and
Yep.
50% humans. So AI
Yep.
agents are now half that group. Now, the reason this is complicated is because, okay, maybe they had too many CSRs. It's also the case that Salesforce has been criticized for being behind the curve on their AI strategy. And this just happens to reinforce their AI technology. So is this a PR stunt or is
Right.
this something that is real? I suspect the answer is a little bit of both.
Right.
But
Probably.
tech CEOs have now gotten on board with the idea of we don't even need humans.
Right.
My former colleague Julie Ask said on a podcast recently, she's like, if you're in San Francisco, you will see billboards that say "Don't hire humans."
Wow.
So this is actually happening. That there are people who think that you can just trade off people for AI agents. And we're going to see where and how that manifests itself. There's probably some truth in that, and there's probably not some truth in that.
Well, but as it relates to, and I get it, right? As it relates to AI functions, and sure, Salesforce, probably some truth to the fact that some of those routine tasks can now be handled by AI that were previously handled by humans. But if you think about the management dynamic, Andy, as we think about 3x the number of employees, regardless of whether AI is handling it or not, you still got a manager sitting there with, when they used to have 5 employees, now they have 15. How the heck do you manage 15 employees? I just,
Well,
in
there's something
terms of,
ironic about it too,
yeah,
Brian, because I suspect what's going to happen next is those people, the managers, won't be able to manage those 15 people because it's too much. They won't be able to contribute and manage the 15 people. So it'll be a net loss. They will not manage the people and they will not deliver as individual contributors. So then they'll get laid off or they'll get bad non-performing stuff. And then that'll just work into another person who's now managing 30 people and also failing. So,
well, to me, Andy, this is all setting the stage for AI because, if you think about, if someone's managing 15 people, and we just gave the Salesforce example, look, some of those 15 people are going to be replaced by AI, right? So really, is AI really I called it the savior earlier. Is that what's going to come in and kind of make this more manageable again for the manager? Look, at the end of the day, you still need oversight. And whether you're managing an AI agent or managing a person, that thing needs oversight. But the manager is still there's still an aspect of context and decision making that has to occur at a managerial level. So to me, this maybe what we're seeing here is companies taking advantage of this kind of opportunity to talk to the street and get a big boost in your stock valuation and all the rest, lower costs, even while revenue is slipping. I'll show an example in a second. But a way for companies to say, hey, set the stage for later when the AI is going to be coming in, like in the case of Salesforce, and replacing some of those humans, so we get back to a reasonable ratio. Some point. To me, it's too much. This is way too many direct reports for an individual. They can't do it. It's untenable.
Yeah, you can't do that. But then maybe the model is wrong. Maybe the model for managing people, just to play counterpoint here, maybe the model for managing people is wrong.
Maybe.
And that, or maybe it's a legacy model and we have to find a new one. And yet it's the same idea of meeting with people and having one-on-one sessions and guiding them and providing, mentorship. Maybe that isn't the way to do this, because at the end of the day, all that is a means to the end of being effective and productive, which is what, on the next slide, this guy said the quiet part out loud. His name's Damon Leaf. He's the CFO from C.H. Robinson. And he said, the processes, and I love this phrase, are human light now. It's what he told a group of investors recently. The reason why is the logistics, it's a global logistics company, and they reported higher profit margins in the second quarter, despite nearly 8% drop in revenue, which is macroeconomic, he said. But he said it has increased productivity 35%. Okay, so they're removing people. Are they removing the deadwood? Or are they just removing people and it's forcing people to be more productive? I mean, there's something called forced productivity. I mean, if you got to do more work with fewer people, guess what? You're going to be more productive. You have to be, or you're just going to fail. So,
right.
Who knows?
Well,
he said the outcome of these transformations means less headcount and more productivity. But again, if you just remove people and the quantity of work doesn't change, by definition, your productivity is going to increase.
But I mean, think about it, Andy. It really does push more accountability to the individual worker to do things like learn themselves, go self-serve and learn, get your own guidance. I mean, to me, there's certain places this will probably work and certain places it won't. But
let's talk about a great point, though. I mean, that's a great point. It will force people to kind of do this on their own, but maybe, just maybe, we now live in a world where they can do a lot of that stuff via ChatGPT, peer networks. Maybe you're not meeting with your boss, but I mean, this is a bit self-serving for us to say, but maybe you're meeting with or getting time with members of the master B2B community who are peers in other environments. And that's your real mentor. And you're just doing your work for this company, but your mentor's at another company.
So the message is, Andy, you don't need a boss. You just need master B2B.
Well, you need to get paid and you have to let somebody in your company know what you're doing. But I think perhaps you don't need to have somebody mentoring you from within your own company.
Maybe.
Now, the hard part is the culture, right? But in terms of the skill set, I don't know. Do you need to go to your company's training classes, or you can do a YouTube video, or can you learn from peers, or can you be trained by ChatGPT? I mean, these are serious questions to be asked.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the pros and cons quickly here. When you delayer, when you remove these layers, obviously for a company, you get lower costs, you get streamlined operations, presumably more productivity, question mark, not sure on that point. To me, the jury's out there. But and of course, inherent in all this, as you reduce costs, Wall Street loves this. They're going to give you, if you're a public company or a PE owned firm, sure, they're going to give you all kinds of benefit by reducing and taking cost out, right? But there's also cons, right? We've been talking about some of these things. Your team is confused. If you have a leader that doesn't have any time for you, and by the way, any time to do their own work, because you got 15 direct reports, you got people burning out, decisions being made on just kind of, 20% of the data because they don't have time to get the rest of the data and analyze and think about it because they got 14 other employee reviews to write or whatever. To me, some of these functional areas we're going to see less productivity out of. Now, again, AI may come in and solve some of this. There's probably some areas where this kind of ratio makes sense. But if you've got highly skilled knowledge workers working for you that need to understand an industry, and to me, it feels too much to me. That's just my opinion on it. Having been a manager for several decades of people, I can't imagine managing 15 people myself. Maybe that model's outdated, Andy. Maybe I'm outdated. I don't know.
That's the thing. Maybe there's a mental shift here that has to take place. And you said writing performance reviews. Well, can ChatGPT do that now? Again, I'm just throwing things out there.
Yeah, right.
In terms of tracking people's performance, isn't there software that can do that? There are ways to really think about this in a different way. The one thing we'll learn whether you can just force the experiment and see the results, because that's what's happening right now. They're pulling the chairs away. They're saying, okay, let's see who gets a seat. And some people are going to figure this out. They're going to turn it into a more effective way of doing things. Some people will not. It does remind me a little bit of what happened when companies went from offline to online. We heard some of the same arguments. It's not the same experience online. You need to talk to somebody in a physical environment, either a branch or a store. You can't productize product knowledge. We heard all those things, but guess what happened? People found a way to do it. Now, it wasn't perfect. We still have offline, and there's now a complement between the two, which is why the Salesforce approach might actually accidentally be the right one, which is you're going to have a combination of humans and agents, AI agents working together. But the consequence of that is you're going to have far fewer humans in that scenario.
This is Darwinian, sir.
What's that?
It's Darwinian. We're going back
there's going to be a survivalist kind of dimension to this. So people are going to get voted off the island, and whoever's left is probably going to be a lot more productive. They're going to be a lot more stressed, but they're going to find a way to make technology work for them. They're going to have to, or guess what? They're going to be out the door, and they're going to pull away more chairs. And I think that's what's going to end up happening here.
We're all headed towards the post-apocalyptic Terminator land, Andy. We're going to be living in the Matrix in another 2 years. Let's see. So we asked our audience this question on LinkedIn. Managers now have 15 direct reports on average, up from 5 in 2017. Is this too many? Guess what? 89% of you said, yes, it's too many. Help. So, anyway, they had the same reaction I did, and maybe we're all old school in our thinking. We're going to see how this plays out, but folks, thanks for your contributions there. And this is a great topic, Andy. We'll keep talking about this, and
we sure will. We're not done talking about this one. We're just getting started on this one, I think.
No question. All right, we're way past Friday 15 here, so let's get to our announcements, folks. The Master B2B Nexus service is your personal B2B digital lifeline. This is a service we offer to practitioners. We offer expert advice and connections with senior level practitioners and industry experts, getting you the information you need quickly, helping you to avoid making mistakes, making the right decisions. This is an expert service. It's a paid service, but we encourage you to check it out because it is really offering a lot of value to folks today. It's like consulting on speed dial or advisory on speed dial on any bespoke issue you have. So I encourage you to check it out on our website, masterb2b.com. Also, we have our forum, which is free for practitioners. Conversations happening every day here. This is like a sort of private LinkedIn almost network just for B2B e-commerce practitioners. We've got chief digital officers, VPs of e-com, chief marketing officers, sales officers, IT, CIOs, et cetera in here. Great group of people. So encourage you to check that out. Free to join. Just need to apply on our website, Master B2B. Click on forum and you'll find it. And finally, want to remind everyone that all of our episodes are available via podcast in a podcast format on your favorite podcast service, Spotify, YouTube, Apple, Google, or on our website, anywhere in the podcastosphere. Is that a word? Podcastosphere universe. Galaxy. Anyhow, folks, encourage you to check that out and please rate us and review us if you have something nice to say. Anyway, Andy, any final words as we cross Friday 25 here?
Nope. In the interest of time, nothing.
Wow, excellent. Okay. All right, folks, we'll see you next week on our next Friday 15.